Welcome everybody, my name is Eric Chapman. Thank you for coming to Austin Custom Brass today and attending the Masterclass with Dr. Jason Hausback. It's a real pleasure to have him. I had the pleasure of meeting you about 4 years ago, I think? Two? Okay, yeah. See, I get confused on time very easily.
2 pandemic years.
2 pandemic years, yeah. That like doubles up. That's like dog years almost. So, he's a fantastic trombonist, fantastic educator. I had the honor of pleasure of getting to take a lesson with him, and I took so much away from it. So I'm really excited for you guys to get to hear him speak. He is a Shires artist. He is the Associate Professor at Missouri State University in Springfield. Missouri State has an awesome trombone studio. Really impressed when I've heard them play. They're going to perform at MMEA later this week, so if you're attending that conference in the Ozarks, please come check them out. And I'm going to turn you guys over to him, so please feel free to ask questions, listen to him. It's a real pleasure to have him. Thank you for joining us online, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it later. We really appreciate it. Contact us if you have any questions. Again, Dr. Jason Hausback.
Well, I thought it'd be fun to start by playing something. This is a really cool piece. It's one of the first solos I heard on bass trombone, and there's a really awesome bass trombonist named Blair Bollinger, who is in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and he recorded this. So when I was becoming a student and taking lessons, this is one of the first solos I heard, and I've really liked it. It's called Spain. It's just for one bass trombone, and I think after hearing it, you'll kind of maybe have a visual image in your head of various aspects of Spain, perhaps flamenco, bullfighting, you know, some of the Moorish Arabic influence. It's in 3 sections. It's really cool. So hope you enjoy David Fetter's Spain. Maybe a little loud right up front here. Turns out that's a little bit easier to play in the evening and not in the morning. All right, so mentioned that I'm a teacher and also a performer. Like you all, I started out learning the trombone and thankfully getting a lot better with the help of teachers and band and all of that. And I think one of the most important things you all can do is just use the opportunities you have around you. Of course, you're taking lessons. That's awesome. Everyone should do that because that helps so much, getting that individual guidance. And just being able to play in different types of groups. So if there's an opportunity for you that's more than just what you do in band class, it's really helpful. Some of the things that helped me the most were actually just playing in things outside of school. Playing in pep band, believe it or not. Learn how to play loud, honestly. Doing extra things. If there's a community kind of group in town and you have time on the weekend to go do that, just being around other musicians and just learning things from other people is so helpful. And of course, the last couple of years there's been less of that, but right now there are so many cool things like that going on. So I feel like most of what I learned was, well, I would say a good half of that was from teachers telling me what to do, and the other half was from actually going out and experiencing that on my own. So even something as simple as like how to warm up properly, that took me a while to really figure out, and I feel like as an adult that's still something I try to get better at. So warm-ups are not the most fun thing in the world, but they really can make a ton of difference. So how many of you do long tones regularly? Do long tones on your instrument? Maybe someone tells you to sometimes, yeah. So that's not the most exciting thing in the world, but that is really, especially for me being a busy teacher, that's one of the most important things for me to do even at my age. So I thought we could do some of that, and one of the things I really like to do with the trombone seems like a simple thing, but just being able to do those long tones without articulating, keeping the sound really steady. So we can't necessarily do a glissando on the euphonium, but it's the same basic idea, just being able to go down the slide or adding valves and keeping the sound the same. So we don't have to spend the whole time doing that, but I thought it'd be fun to do some of that together. I usually start with a few minutes of that, and then maybe I'll take some sort of pattern, part of a scale, and I'll do that, and I'll try to go the whole range of my instrument. So maybe we can do kind of a mini version of that right now. Cool, so let's start with F. F right in the staff is a good place, kind of right in the middle of your range. You know, we want to play a nice, maybe comfortable mezzo forte. Don't really want to force this right away when you're warming up, but just keeping it nice and steady. How many of you have done a Remington exercise before? You know what those are? We move by half steps. Cool, yep, okay, well let's do some of that. And if you're playing trombone, let's go ahead and do it without tonguing right now. So we're gonna have a really steady sound. Let's try that, so F to E natural. And of course for you, just go ahead and go to E natural. 1, 2, ready. Yep, and we want that air to stay absolutely steady as we go between the notes. F to E flat. 1, 2, ready. That's going to be all the way to B natural. Ready, go. done something like that before in band. But doing that on your own, although it maybe isn't the most interesting thing, is really helpful because we can work on so many different things. Keeping the sound steady, being really accurate, especially with the slide or at the fingers, making sure we're super accurate with that. Keeping the sound steady, playing in tune, maybe even playing in time. As we go further, being able to move the slide really accurately. What usually happens, do you all think, when we add more tubing and we're playing? So if we go down the slide or if we add more valves, what sometimes happens to the sound?
It gets lower.
Okay, the pitch goes lower. What usually happens to our actual sound or our air when we have more tubing? Do we know? Yeah, we usually have to use more air. So that's why I really like the glissando one, because it's easy to hear if your air is changing. And actually, you have to blow a little bit more air when we go down to those notes, or we go down to the low range. So anytime we're adding valves or we're moving the slide, it seems like a simple thing, but if we can keep that air really steady, that's the basis really for everything else getting better. So let's do one more of those, and this time we're gonna go up. So F in the staff, and we're working our way up. And trombonist, let's do the F in 6 position so we can use the slide. Yep, that's going to be F to G flat. I should have told you that. So let's do that one again. If you are in high school or going to college, you might take that and add more range to it or go quicker. I'll just kind of show you some of the ones I do. Sorry, they're kind of more trombone-like than valve-like, but you could do a similar version. The stuff that we just did, I usually will do a fast motion version of that. So if we take all those and put them together, it's kind of like a fast Remington. Those notes put together into 2 measures. And the same thing works really well going up higher. So if you work on things like that over a number of years, it gets a lot easier to play high notes because you're starting on a lower note, and over time you can maybe train yourself to be relaxed and really find the right air to find those notes. So that takes some practice. Any note that sounds good at some point doesn't sound good when you start. That's okay. Push yourself. You don't necessarily want to force yourself to play high notes, but they're not going to sound great at first. It's just a thing of brass playing. But if you spend some time and work on it. I sometimes just want to go somewhere by myself. No one hears the bad notes when I start. That's fine. But over time, those become a lot easier. And same thing with low notes. That's one of the best things as a bass trombonist that helped me is doing those glissandos in the low range. So I'll just do a couple of them real quick. So you might not be able to play all those notes at first, but if you spend the first 10 minutes maybe of your warm-up doing that every day, those notes will all get easier, and it's easier to be relaxed when you play high notes and low notes over time. So those are also maybe good to do and practice dynamics, but I would say just starting simply with that. Those are also really good to do and maybe take a pattern that's different than just a Remington exercise. So, you all know your scales pretty well? Learned some scales in middle school? Yeah? A few of them?
Elementary school.
Yeah, not in school, hopefully outside of school a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I have my students do, of course in college, basically by then most people are learning or have learned all 12 of the scales. So it's easier to take something, maybe like a simple melody and then just play it in different keys. That takes a little bit of practice of learning the scale, but you can do some of that even before you learn your scales. Again, I think on trombone, it's a little bit easier to visualize that because if you play something and then you go up a position and play the same thing, it's now a half step higher. So maybe a good example of that would be like Mary Had a Little Lamb, just a simple folk song. So if I take that, I can actually take the same thing and just start a half step lower. So sometimes that's actually easier to think that way than actually thinking, oh, that's a sharp scale with 4 sharps. I don't know how to play that one. You know what I mean? So let's try a little bit of that. Another thing I find really helpful for myself and for my students is playing by ear. So we're going to do just a little bit of that right now. We'll keep it simple though. So we're going to do just the first half of Mary Had a Little Lamb like I just did. And we're going to start on the note A. Cool. So trombonist, I suppose you can watch me and copy the positions, but let's see if we can find those notes by ear. So here's the first one. Yep, that one's gonna be a G, yep. Now, I will tell you, even for my college students, some people are like deathly afraid of this. It's like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know what the notes are. The band director needs to give me the music. So I'm not necessarily making fun of anybody, but I really encourage everybody to just, whether or not it's in front of a group of people, that's harder to do, or on your own, just spend a little bit of time every day doing this. A lot of times it might be, well, I have this music and my teacher said to practice this. I have a new piece in band, I gotta work on that. But as you spend some time working on your ear, that will speed up everything else that you do in your playing. And even if it's just very simple, if I play one note and you play one note back, guess what? You just play by ear. Of course, there are professional musicians that can do amazing things by ear. If you ever go hear a jazz band or a jazz combo, there's a lot of great jazz groups here in Kansas City. You might hear someone play a solo completely by ear. You're like, whoa, how do they do that? That's like step 10,000. If we start on like step 1 or step 2, that can be as simple as just playing one note back and forth. So I encourage you, as much as you can in public, like get comfortable with that over time. That is one of those things that will make you a better brass player, because so much of playing an instrument is listening. And sometimes we forget about that when we're thinking about valves or slide or the metronome or the band director's looming over me and I gotta play the right rhythm. So let's try that one more time and see if we can get more comfortable with that. So first note is A. it's a little bit higher than that.
Oh, C?
Yep. Yep, so we have basically A, G, F, and C, so 4 notes. Let's try it together. Good, we got it, yeah. So, my point about doing that in different keys, if you get comfortable with that, you don't necessarily even have to think about what all the keys are to play that in other ones. So, let's try it once, and this might be a little bit harder to do on euphonium, where we're going to start 1/2 step lower. So on trombone, it's the same pattern, it just starts a little bit further down the slide. And on euphonium, we're going to start a 1/2 step lower on A flat.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see if we can figure that out. I'll do it one more time. Let's try it together. Let's try A flat one more time. There you go. Yeah, good job. Let's try it once more. Yeah, so that takes more than a few minutes to get comfortable with that. Sometimes that feels like it's slower to learn by ear at first, but it is much quicker once you kind of get over the hump with that. So, why should we, or maybe why make it a fun thing to learn melodies by ear? Anybody have any ideas?
It trains on it. It trains on it.
Trains your ear, yeah, good job. Any other thoughts? Because someone told you to? Yeah.
Because music should be fun.
Yeah. And this is the thing that's, sometimes it's not fun to feel like you don't know how to do something. I understand that, especially in a class. I don't know if any of you are in a jazz band or like in middle school, if we have that at all, or in high school. Sometimes when the teacher wants you to play by ear in front of everybody, you don't want to do that, right? But if you get more comfortable with it, it's actually a lot of fun. I sometimes, when I have a break from school, we are still on break from our university. Somehow we're not starting until Monday, so that's been like, it feels like months. Sometimes I just turn on music and play along with it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of rules, like, oh, I have to play exactly what they're playing. I actually find it fun to turn on something I already know and just kind of make up something that goes with it. There's a lot of cool apps you can use to do that, especially if you're a little more jazz oriented. There's an app called iReal Pro. There are websites that will actually play the chords to songs that you know and will kind of show you what the chord is so you can learn that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an assignment, it's just kind of a fun way, especially if you have a group of people, to do some of that back and forth. Maybe the first couple times are a little bit tentative to do that, but it really gets a lot easier. So one thing I have my students do is they learn a melody. Maybe Mary Had a Little Lamb is the first one that they do, and then they kind of go on to more advanced ones. And then because they have college classes, such as piano class, I encourage them to be able to play the chords as well. Now, that's kind of hard to do until you're maybe at the college level, but if you're taking lessons and you've spent some time doing that, it's a great way to kind of learn a little bit more about the actual chords of the piece and the music theory and all that. So you don't necessarily have to do that when you're starting to learn that, but it's good also while you're learning the melody by ear to kind of learn something about it. Maybe what does it look like on the page? Is it in major or minor? What key am I playing in when I do that? All that stuff can help you learn the stuff that's on the side of reading music as well. So I really think doing all that together is really helpful. Let's just take some stuff and I'm going to play something and we'll just have you play it back. It'll be simple things. So there'll be some rhythms in there, maybe a couple different notes, but I'm going to keep it really simple. Let's give it a try. First one's easy. Here we go. 1, 2, ready. So that's an easy version of that. I got the really awesome honor of going to South America in August, and there's this trombone camp in Argentina called Trombonanza. And there was a bunch of trombonists from all over South America that came to that. And we had some master classes, and that was tough. I speak some Spanish, but when you're surrounded by 50 people that speak Spanish and not English, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, what do we do? And I decided, you know what, I'm not going to talk very much. I'm going to play and have them repeat that. And everybody in the room kind of like breathed a sigh of relief because they weren't worried at that point about how to communicate. Let's just listen and do that. And they turned out to be really good at doing that, even though some of them were maybe like 4th and 5th grade. They had never had lessons before. Maybe they had never even heard an adult trombone player before. But they were pretty good at using their ears doing that. And some of that just has to do with the fact that they listen to music, they dance to music. They don't necessarily know all of the nuts and bolts of the music, but they just had fun doing it. And that environment, after we went around the room and did that a couple of times, everyone really had fun. And they kind of got over the, oops, I made a mistake. That's okay. Let's just do it kind of deal. So I really encourage you all to do that. In small groups, it's really helpful. If you play like in a trombone quartet or a tuba euphonium quartet, that's a great way to do that. Take a melody you like, see if you can figure it out. Any of you have a song you like, maybe we can try to figure out. Anything come to mind?
Not really.
Okay, no? Maybe?
Jingle bells?
Jingle bells, cool. Let's jingle bells actually, if we do a little bit of it, won't be too bad. It's kind of like Mary Had a Little Lamb. Cool, so we're going to start on the same note we did before, and that's going to be A natural. Starts with 3 of the same note. Let's try it. 1, 2, ready. Let's try that one together. So, like Mary Had a Little Lamb, it's the same notes. So we have A, C, F, and G. Sorry, I had to think about that. Let's try that one again. Starts on A. Cool. Let's try that much together. So that's 4 measures. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's a little bit more to it, but that's the first 2 measures of Jingle Bells. Anyone else have one? Anything come to mind? Dr. Chapman, anything?
To be honest, now that you're asking, my brain is like blank.
That-
I'm trying to think of tunes that they would know, because I'm thinking of like Autumn Leaves or something
Yeah,
like
that is a common thing when put on the spot. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Star Wars.
Star
Yeah,
Wars.
Star Wars.
Okay,
Yeah.
like the main one?
Yep.
Okay. That one's a little bit harder. I will tell you, everything John Williams wrote is hard. I had my students try Imperial March before, and it was like, wow, that is really hard. That's hard for me to do. But the main theme is a little bit easier. Starts with that. That's simple. So let's do that on low B flat. 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to kind of add a couple notes on each time. So jumps up to the next partial. What note will that be? Yep, good. Let's try it. 1, 2. And then it's going to go down the scale, just not all the way back to B flat. Now, by scale, I'll say B flat scale. So we all know our B flat scale pretty well? Cool. Let's try that. 1, 2, 3. That's kind of tricky. Yeah, you got too. Yeah, I'll make a point of saying that you don't have to necessarily only play by ear stuff that you've never seen before. If you have a part that you played in band or in your method book, memorizing that is a form of playing by ear. And maybe that is a little bit easier to start with if you see it and then you try to play it without looking at it. That's another really good way of working on our ear, and maybe it's kind of like a shortcut to learning it. But let's try it one more time. So let's try it a second time. 1, 2, 3. And there's one extra part after that. So that one we're on F, and it starts on E flat. Goes to C. Let's try just that part right there. There you go. And then B flat's the last note. Now, the song goes on a little bit longer than that. I think you know in the movie it happens hundreds of times probably. But we have the simple version. Let's see if we can put it together. I'll play it once, then we'll try it. Cool. Let's try it together. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, good job. So I did that same thing in Argentina, and of course the songs they came up with I had never heard before, but a couple people could play them and played it, and everybody had fun. I mean, people were practically dancing. That's how much fun they had. So you don't necessarily have to dance to do that, but that's a really good way to work on stuff. The long tones that we started with, that's good to do in a group. Like if you're working in a trombone quartet and you do some of that with chords. Sorry, I really wanted my students to come here, but school starts on Monday and we have 3 concerts in the next 4 days, I think, 5 days. So they're kind of busy right now, but I may have had them like play for you and basically do the glissando thing just as a group. So you can kind of imagine some different ways to do that. Anybody have any questions? Cool. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about, and it might seem weird that I have a bag of straws, but I just kind of want to show you all another cool thing about working on a brass instrument. Just got to get the bag over here. So why doesn't everybody grab a straw? Cool. Yeah, get to pick your color and everything. Want one?
Oh, of course.
You probably did this a couple years ago.
We did.
A little bit. Okay, awesome. Grab one.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this seems weird, and every time I do this, I'll be like, I usually have a straw, and I pulled out my pocket. People are like, wow, you're weird. Why do you have a straw in your pocket? There's a reason for that. So we've done some playing by ear. Another thing that's really helpful to do, and it might seem kind of simple, is just taking a straw and blowing air through it. So usually I don't necessarily do this like walking down the hall, but I drove here this morning from Springfield. I spent some time blowing air through the straw. And it's very simple. You can actually literally just go. Or if you have the straw kind of outside of your lips, it makes a sound. So let's just try blowing the air with our lips around the straw first. Very easy, right? Cool. So I don't know, do any of you do like breathing exercises or anything like that at school? Or maybe in your lessons?
Not as yes.
Yeah. So here's just a slightly different way to do this. The thing I like about the straw when you blow air with it outside of your lips is you can hear the sound. So it's kind of like doing a long tone, just without the instrument, right? So all the stuff you want to do when you play a long tone is the same in terms of it being steady. Maybe there's a dynamic to it, etc. all of that we want to be the same. And that usually isn't too hard for people to pick up, but the next step maybe is take a melody and do it on the straw. So we'll blow some air first and I'll show you kind of what I mean. So right now we're just gonna go, and the goal is to aim the air down the straw. It might be helpful maybe if you put your hand in front of the straw, you can feel a little bit of air perhaps, you know. So the goal is just taking the air and having it go a direction. Just like a brass instrument, we want the air to go in a straight line. Yeah, let's try it. Now this is really helpful because it gives us a way to visualize, maybe visualize is the wrong word because we don't see the air, but hear the air and be able to tell if our air is direct and going in a straight line. Why is that important, you think?
So I know it sound like not squeezed, not forced.
Okay, yeah. If you go outside and you see your air on a cold day, what does it normally look like? It looks kind of like a cloud, right? So depending on the brass instrument, it varies a little bit, but I would say especially for trumpet and trombone, our air kind of starts like this, and to play a brass instrument well, we have to kind of think of it going more in a straight line. Now, it won't literally look like a straight line. Air is gas. It's gonna do what gas does. But we have to also remember that even a high-pitched brass instrument has a lot of tubing. Anybody know how much tubing a euphonium or a trombone has if you stretch it out?
A lot.
It's a lot.
It's like 9 feet.
Yeah, 9 feet and a few inches or so. So a trumpet is already 4.5 feet right there. A tuba is a lot, 18, 19 feet, right? Now, there's a lot of variance on that. A horn has more tubing than trombone, believe it or not. So if you can imagine if you played like a bugle or a trumpet and you play trombone, if I start here, the tubing is going to go all the way to the chairs, right? A bugle would be like an instrument with no valves. I don't know if they have any bugles here or not.
Similar to the open
Yeah. So if I took this and unwound it, it's like one long trumpet and it's going to go halfway across the room. So just being able to blow air through the straw really helps you to have a more focused sound and have more steady air when you play the instrument. So does that make sense? On a euphonium, the tone quality is a little bit different than we want on the trombone. So maybe if I'm playing trombone, I'm going to be a little more. Maybe on euphonium or tuba, it's going to be a little bit more like. Still want to have steady, focused air. It's just going to be a little bit different in tone quality, right? That makes sense. Cool. So what I find this helpful with is just one, waking up, getting some air to flow. Maybe just doing a couple minutes of that before I play my instrument really helps. If you don't want to do the straw, you can do the same thing on the trombone. Of course, the air runs out really fast when you do that. So the nice thing about the straw is it's almost more like the amount of air playing the instrument. If I do that on the trombone, I run out really quick. All right, so we're gonna do a couple of those and we'll add a step to it. And we'll kind of see where it could be really helpful. Yeah. If you do that and you're walking down the hall, someone might think you're weird, but that's okay. Musicians are a little bit different, right? In a good way. Yeah. Cool. So the next step is, and this is where I find it very helpful, is to actually go ahead and articulate. So imagine we're going to play a song. Let's say we're doing Mary Had a Little Lamb. We don't have to actually worry about the notes, but we're going to do the rhythm. Bum, 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 bum. Let's do that on the straw. So now we're tonguing. Yeah, if you want, again, I'm a trombonist, I think that way. You could even do the slide positions with your slide arm as you hold the straw with the other. Or valves. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. Let's try that one more time. Mary Had a Little Lamb. That one's pretty simple, but that's a good way to be able to tell if your articulation and your tonguing is consistent. So, Mary Had a Little Lamb is a pretty simple one. Let's do that rhythm on Star Wars now. Cool, let's try it together. A little bit harder. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that is just a very helpful way to just become more consistent at steady sounds and articulating. It's also a good way to work on your ear, because when you do that, you still have to hear Star Wars. And if you're doing the positions, you still have to almost like you're playing it, you're just taking away one step. So I found that for probably 95% of my students, if they do some of that before they play, then it's easier for them to play. So all the same concepts that when you're playing the instrument you want to do. You want to be relaxed, want to have good posture. Of course, you want to think about what the music is, but that's a really good way to work on, you know, for instance, if I go, let's say I want to work on the rhythm of Star Wars. Cool. And then maybe go ahead and do it on the instrument, but just play the same note. And then after that, maybe go ahead and play the notes and actually move your valves or your slide. So let's try that once. Let's do just the straw one, and then we'll do one on the instrument where we play the same note. Okay, here we go. 1, 2. Yeah, we'll keep it a short little amount. So just the first half on the instrument, just on B flat. 1, 2. Cool. Let's try it again now, and let's see if we can remember what those notes were. I'll play it once. Just that much with the written notes. Here we go. 1, 2. Yeah, so that's a really good way in maybe a few minutes to take something on the page that's a little more advanced and break it down. So if you're learning a new piece, and you know what it sounds like, maybe do a little bit of the straw thing, maybe blow the air on the instrument. Try it with the repeated note, especially if you're playing something that has a lot of articulation, and then go back and play it with the actual notes, so moving the slide or the valves. Seems very simple, but that's kind of like the 2-minute secret to taking something and breaking it down. Of course, there's a lot of other ways to do that. That is a really helpful way to just focus first on rhythm and being consistent, and then maybe adding the notes. Cool. Anybody have any questions? I would say, oh, sorry?
Sorry, as a bass trombonist, what's your favorite music to play? Is that like classical or orchestral or?
That's a good question. I really kind of like being a freelancer.
Uh-huh.
So when I can, I try to play in a lot of different groups. I play in Fountain City Brass Band, which you all know I think is in town. If you haven't heard of that group, check it out. They're awesome. That one's kind of like in the middle. We play some jazz types of things. It's a little bit different than a jazz band because it's a brass band, but we're playing Malagueña today. If you've heard that one. I actually like playing solos. I didn't really like that when I was a student, but now that I get to decide if I want to or not, it's kind of fun. I find orchestra to be fun, you know, in moderation. It's a lot of sitting and waiting, but it's really a lot of fun. Yeah, really probably everything, honestly. I don't necessarily play in a lot of commercial or pop groups, but when someone calls me to do that, that's really fun, and you have to use your ear a lot because most of the time whoever plays in that group, maybe they're doing like weddings or something, or parties, and they all know the music and you don't, and you just have to quickly try to figure it out, you know. I don't know if any of you have done gigs like that, but it's like there might be a book. It's probably wrong. You've heard September song, but do you really know it? And you'll find out really quickly if you do or not, or at least do you know it well enough to seem like you know it. So
Every salsa band.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you know, if you're gonna do that, you probably should learn a lot more about Celia Cruz for a starting point, but there's gonna be way more than that. Or it's just a matter of like, okay, I need to get better at reading trumpet parts because maybe there is no trombone part, and maybe you're an octave or two below wherever the lead trumpet is, but you just kind of figure it out. So, yeah, so I guess to be honest, I like a variety of things. It's fun. Nobody can be the best at everything, but I think over time that's a good way to kind of challenge the musicianship by kind of showing up and doing a different group depending on the week and things like that. So, yeah. What kind of music do you all like?
Evan, what do you like?
Oh, me personally, I like more of orchestra music.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Ryan, what do you listen
I like jazz.
Really? Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I like more classical.
Classical? Yeah. I think that's an interesting thing because depending on where you are, that varies a lot. I don't know many trombone players that like country music, for instance, but if you live in a place where that happens, sometimes you get to play trombone in a country band. You know, one of my good friends from college is the trombonist for Toby Keith, and I didn't even know Toby Keith had a
Who's
trombonist.
Toby Keith?
Toby Keith is a country star. Yeah, but you don't have to look it up, that's okay. Yeah, so the cool thing about traveling groups is that a lot of them don't have instruments on their album. I think the producers are just not super into that, which is unfortunate. But if they go on tour, they will oftentimes take some horns with them. Of course, if you watch the late night shows, there's a lot of groups that have horns. That's really cool. So I think, you know, at the very least when they go on tour, they try to do something that's more than the album is. Besides all the pyrotechnics and all that, sometimes they have horn players, or they'll have another group with horn players kind of open up for them. So, you know, I'm sure there's probably a decent number of those that come through town here. Of course, there are some musicians now that will like do their show at the Kansas City Symphony, and you know, that's where I think the classical players have to be able to be creative. And you know, I think I heard a story, maybe it was like Bela Fleck or someone has a show where they actually ask the musicians to kind of come up with the parts on stage. And I'm sure some of the string players are like, what? What? I've been practicing Brahms my whole life, you know? So, you know, a lot of different applications of that, but that's where it's good to just be able to hear well enough to fit in and listen to enough different music that you can at least kind of know some of it. So, anyway, yeah. Any other questions?
3 or 4 minutes left. Does anybody have anything they're working on right now that, oh man, if I could ask one question to make this a little bit better or something? I know you guys are all working on something.
Yeah.
If you're not, I'm very disappointed.
Probably time to learn a solo, huh, for the
How do you
spring?
make 16 notes easier to play?
Well, that's a good question. I think one of the best things to do is make them not as fast as 16th notes and eventually speed up. So for instance, if you play 16th notes at half the tempo, then what kind of note is it?
8.
Exactly. Yeah, so some of the things we did, just playing the repeated notes is really helpful. Maybe take a metronome and just bump it up. Because it does take a little while to work on coordination, for instance, like tonguing faster. But if you take something that's more challenging and you break it into small pieces, and over time you work up to it, it will be a lot easier than just trying to go the full tempo. That's a really good question. I find for a lot of my students, when they do this, they can do 8 notes pretty well, but when they get to 16th notes, the air doesn't quite go the same direction. So that just takes some time to train. That is a very specialized skill to blow air 9.5 feet down a tube exactly the same all the time. So I think just finding ways to kind of work on that is really helpful.
So would that be using the straw?
Yeah, I would have people do the straw and then maybe do the same thing on the instrument, gradually speed it up. It takes more than a day to be able to play 16th notes. But if you get the air and the tongue part down, then the next step is to like work on the slide or the valves and get those to match. Because a lot of times that's going to want to move slower than your air does. It's a really good question.
Anybody else working on anything? They have a next question?
What made you decide to play the trombone?
That's kind of a funny story, actually. I don't want to say by accident, but it was kind of by accident. I remember going to like the instrument zoo, that's what they call that, and you try out the different instruments. And you know, they usually like the people there know about the instruments and they kind of narrow it down for you, like, oh, you know, don't do that one. And I just remember going around the room. I tried the saxophone, and they suggested I don't play it because I was going to get braces. So, okay. Tried percussion. Do you have coordination? I think I did everything backwards. They're like, don't play percussion. And I got to trombone and trumpet, and this will sound really silly. Between the two of them, I picked the trombone because I thought it was going to be easier to take care of because it's a slide versus valves. So I ended up playing the trombone because I was kind of a lazy fourth grader, I guess, you know. But I'm really happy I did now because after a couple years of playing it, it kind of made sense that my air works better for lower notes than higher notes. So that doesn't mean that I couldn't have played the trumpet, but I think whether or not that was me or the training over time, it just really suited that instrument better, and I really enjoy playing it now. So I guess what started by accident ended up being a good thing. So maybe it happened for a reason, you know. But that's not really a great reason to pick an instrument, but that's what elementary school me was thinking at the time. So turns out you have to maintain the trombone just as much as the trumpet. It's less obvious because you can't see necessarily the inside of the slide as easy as you can see valves moving, you know. So. Well, I wanted to tell you all about one more thing. The trombone ensemble at Missouri State, he mentioned is playing at MMEA on Thursday. We actually have a concert tomorrow in Liberty. I don't know how far is Liberty from here.
15 minutes.
Here it's about 24 minutes.
Everything's far away, yeah. Yeah, cool. I actually didn't know where it was, but there are 4 groups playing a concert tomorrow, and they're all going to MMEA, so we're going to be one of them. Liberty North High School Band, University of Missouri, Mizzou's wind ensemble, Central Missouri's jazz band, and then our trombone ensemble. So if anybody's interested in going to that, that starts at 2 o'clock tomorrow, and the students will be there, hopefully. I think it's going to snow in Springfield between now and then. Hopefully they'll get here, but that will be a really fun concert. And we have a whole ensemble of just trombones. There's actually 26 trombones in the group and some percussionists, so we have a lot of fun with that.
You guys have that posted on like your website or something, or the location and stuff?
Yeah, there's, I'm not sure I sent you that specific poster, but I think somebody made one and put it on Facebook. I sent you a specific.
Yeah, you sent me one and I put it on, I sent it out to people.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah.
too, so.
Yeah, I think they made one that had all 4 groups on it, and maybe it was the high school that did that.
Yeah, yours just had the trombone, the dates for the 3 trombone, the Liberty, then Missouri
State,
and then MMEA.
Yeah, so anyway, I'd love to see anyone out there if they're available tomorrow afternoon. Should be fun. I hear there's food as well, so that'll be good. Yeah.
Yeah, the group is fantastic, guys, if you have the opportunity to hear it. Plus, just hearing a whole trombone choir is really, really.
What's the
very
group
special.
again?
Missouri State Trombone Ensemble. Yeah, of course, I'm biased, but I think a low brass ensemble is one of the best. It really fits the range of the human voice. Of course, we have a small alto trombone as well, and then larger bass instruments. But there's a lot of really cool stuff for like trombone quartet, tuba euphonium quartet, like a choir. And it works really well because the range of the trombone is very large. I'm not saying like, you know, a flute choir isn't cool. That can be cool too. But they tend to, just because of the range of their instrument, play higher notes, whereas the trombone can have higher, middle, and very low notes as well. So I'm biased, but I think it's a cool thing to check out. It just works really well for the instrument. So, yeah.
That's very cool. There's also a summer program, guys, the Kansas City Trombone Workshop. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've heard about it a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, there's some really cool trombone stuff available for these sorts of opportunities, even in Kansas City. So. But yes, if you have the opportunity, please go hear Missouri State's trombone choir.
Yeah, I guess if there's any other plug I want to make, of course, I want to thank Austin Custom Brass for having me in. This is really awesome. Only my second time in the store. I wish they had this in Springfield. And I do know even some of the people I know in Springfield are interested in coming here because they just have a lot of cool stuff. Of course, I want to thank SE Shires as well. That's what I play on. I think they're awesome instruments. There are a lot of really cool brands, good brands these days, but I would encourage you all to check them out. That is what, I've played this one for 20 years. You can probably tell it looks kind of old. It's been around the world a few times, but amazing instruments and amazing staff there, and they're doing a lot of cool stuff. They make trumpets now, as far as I know. They make euphoniums. I don't think they make horns, but they basically most of the brass family. So, of course, I want to thank them for helping sponsor this, and I encourage you all to check out those instruments. They're awesome. So, all right, thank you. You've all
Thank
been a
you.
great audience.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate you guys coming, asking such great questions, participating. And again, thank you to Dr. Jason Hausback for giving us his time today. We truly appreciate him. One more round of applause for him, please.